Good morning, everyone, and welcome to part 29 of my journey to becoming a voice actor. It is also, I did this intro a little wrong, but it is also January the 18th today. And we're starting right on time, which is something I did not do yesterday. So I apologize for that. But we're on time today. Um, To be quite honest, I don't have a concrete plan for today, but I'll just you know what? Well, maybe we could do something. No, I think that'd be better for part 30 though, wouldn't it? To make it more special that way. Yeah. No, we'll save that for part 30 for next time. Part 30 is on next Monday. That is when the next stream will be. There we go. Now you're not just looking to a blank void there. So yeah, I'm not really sure what exactly I'm going to do today. Um One part of my brain is telling me maybe I just make this an extra long reading session. Um or I mean, I could read to you guys for like 3 hours. But then again, that is quite a bit of reading. So let's look at some stuff here on YouTube. Maybe I can find something. I have an idea, actually. I do have an idea that just came up. Let's see here. What's his name? I have a really fresh idea. You should do voice acting. Oh god, that is why didn't I think of that? That's such a good idea. I wish I came up with that. You're so right.
look so special to me. Yep. This is where it all started. That day Mother saved me and left you behind. The thing you don't know is, she tried to save you too. She kept searching and searching. Until I killed her.
I have no recollection of this tale. Or this place. It's all an illusion. Created by this extraordinary fruit. Its power, you see, is all I ever wanted. And with this,
No.
I will have everything!
So this is from DMC 5.
No, brother. You don't have everything. That last shred of humanity that you still had, you just lost it.
That is nothing but the pitiful cries of those without strength. Come to me, brother. I shall enlighten you.
This is you and me. I am Urzixen eating the fruit. And you're Dante who's about to kick my ass.
I shall enlighten you, Dante.
They're brothers? Why are they fighting each other?
To see one's justice through, a man must fight for it, even if the one who stands before him is his kin.
That's ridiculous.
The brothers of blood disagree on the very reason of their existence. They must fight.
This game was so good too. It was really fun. Yeah, you're Dante. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You'd definitely be Dante in this case. I'm the one I'm the one trying to get I need more power. I need to eat the fruit. The fruit that has taken 10 million gallons of blood from the city upstairs. Virgil.
Hey, is that the damn fruit you've been jabbering about? Doesn't look so special to me. Yep. This is where it all started. That day Mother saved me and left you behind. The thing you don't know is, she tried to save you too. She kept searching and searching. Until I killed her.
I have no recollection.
I have no recollection of this tale or this place.
Of this tale.
or this place. It's all an illusion created by this extraordinary fruit. Its power, you see, is all I ever wanted. And with this, no, I will have everything. No, brother. You don't have everything. That last shred of humanity you still had, you just lost it. That is nothing but the pitiful cries of those without strength. Come to me, brother. I shall enlighten you. Dante! I am the storm that is approaching, provoking black clouds in isolation. God, having the Yamato as a weapon would be so fucking cool. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so we'll try again. Virgil.
Hey, is that the damn fruit you've been jabbering about? Doesn't look.
Hey,
Hey,
is that that damn fruit you've been jabbering about? Doesn't look so special to me. Yep.
Yep.
This is where it all started.
That day
Mother saved me and left you behind. The thing you don't know is, she tried to save you too. She kept searching and searching until it killed her. I have no recollection of this tale or this place. It's all an illusion created by this extraordinary fruit. Its power, you see, is all I ever want. With this, no, I will have everything. No, brother. You don't have everything. That last shred of humanity you still had, you just lost it. That is nothing but the pitiful cries of those without strength.
Come
Come to me, brother. I shall enlighten you, Dante.
They're brothers? Why are they fighting each other? To see one's justice through, a man must fight for it, even if the one who stands before him is his kin.
I could make so many jokes about this one face here. Oh. Virgil. Is that damn fruit you've been jabbering about? Doesn't look so special to me. Yup. This is where it all started. That day Mother saved me and left you behind. The thing you don't know is, she tried to save you too. She kept searching and searching, until it killed her. I have no recollection of this tale, or this place. It's all an illusion, created by this extraordinary fruit. Its power, you see, is all I ever wanted. And with this, no, I will have everything. No, brother, you don't have everything. That last shred of humanity you still had, you just lost it. That is nothing but the pitiful cries of those without strength. Come to me, brother. I shall enlighten you, Dante. Alright, let's try recording it now. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Test, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Test, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, so I checked my stream delay settings and apparently it was already set to 7 seconds, so I don't know if I'm maybe going crazy. It seems like the stream delay is more than 7 seconds to me, but I could be wrong. So, I don't know. Anyways. Virgil. Hey, is that damn fruit that you've been jabbering about? Doesn't look so special to me. Yup. This is where it all started. That day Mother saved me and left you behind. The thing you don't know is, she tried to save you too. She kept searching and searching until it killed her. I have no recollection of this tale or this place. It's all an illusion created by this extraordinary fruit. Its power, you see, is all I ever wanted. And with this, no, I will have everything. No, brother, you don't have everything. That last shred of humanity that you still had, you just lost it. That is nothing but the pitiful cries of those without strength. Come to me, brother. I shall enlighten you. Dante! Virgil. Hey, is that damn fruit that you've been jabbering about? Doesn't look so special to me. Doesn't look so special to me. Yup. This is where it all started. Sorry, let me share Audacity so you guys can see. That day Mother saved me and left you behind. Left you behind. You behind. The thing you don't know is, she tried to save you too. She kept searching and searching until it killed her. I have no recollection of this tale or this place. It's all an illusion created by this extraordinary fruit. Its power, you see, is all I ever wanted. And with this, no, I will have everything. It's actually not bad sound effects. Biting a blood-infused apple. No, brother. No, brother. You don't have everything. That last shred of humanity that you still had, you just lost it. Just lost it. That is nothing but the pitiful cries of those without strength. Come to me, brother. I shall enlighten you. Dante! Virgil. Hey, is that damn fruit that you've been jabbering about? Doesn't look so special to me. Yup. This is where it all started. That day Mother saved me and left you behind. The thing you don't know is, she tried to save you too. She kept searching and searching, until it killed her. I have no recollection of this tale, or this place. It's all an illusion, created by this extraordinary fruit. Its power, you see, is all I ever wanted. And with this, no, I will have everything. No, brother, you don't have everything. That last shred of humanity that you still had, you just lost it. That is nothing but the pitiful cries of those without strength. Come to me, brother. I shall enlighten you. Dante! Maybe I could add like a phaser to the voice. Like, because his voice is a little modified. All right, that was a pretty good take. We'll do another one.
Virgil. Hey, is that the damn fruit you've been jabbering about? Doesn't look so special to me. Yep. This is where it all started. That day Mother saved me and left you behind. The thing you don't know is, she tried to save you too. She kept searching and searching. Until I killed her.
I have no recollection of this tale or this place. It's all an illusion created by this extraordinary fruit. Its power, you see, is all I ever wanted. And with this,
No.
I will have everything.
Yeah, his voice is a little modified.
That is nothing but the pitiful cries of those without strength. Come to me, brother. I shall enlighten you. Dante!
Yeah, slight modifier. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, I was able to get the record machine working. Or record player working. Sounds great. It's just setting it up was a little finicky because I didn't know what to do, but it's weird. You have to like turn the TV on, and then you have to put the needle over top, and then adjust the volume. It's a little weird. I think it's a little overcomplicated, to be honest. I mean, it sounds great, but yeah, it's just really confusing at first. But I got it now. Yeah, it's it's definitely one of my favorite albums of all time I've ever listened to. Every single song on that album is good. There's not one bad song, which is crazy to me. Like every single song on Currents is good. Which, probably besides like Fleetwood Mac. And that album of theirs, Rumors. It's just, yeah, every single song is good. The art of the album cover too is really cool on the inside. All right, let's keep going. I don't need these on. Actually, hold on. I think I have this tuned a little too high. I don't need to be that high. Virgil. Virgil. Oh. Got choked up twice. Come on. Virgil. Let's just fucking restart. Virgil. Hey, is that damn fruit you been jabbering about? Doesn't look so special to me. Yup. This is where it all started. That day Mother saved me and left you behind. The thing you don't know is, she tried to save you too. She kept searching and searching until it killed her. I have no recollection of this tale or this place. It's all an illusion created by this extraordinary fruit. Its power, you see, is all I ever wanted. And with this, I will have everything. No, brother, you don't have everything. That last shred of humanity you still had, you just lost it. That is nothing but the pitiful cries of those without strength. Come to me, brother. I shall enlighten you. Dante! That is nothing but the pitiful cries of those without strength. Come to me, brother. I shall enlighten you. Dante! Virgil. Virgil. Hey, is that damn fruit you been jabbering about? Doesn't look so special to me. Yup. This is where it all started. The thing you don't know is, that day Mother saved me and left you behind. Left you behind. Behind. The thing you don't know is, she tried to save you too. She kept searching and searching. Until it killed her. I have no recollection of this tale. Or this place. It's all an illusion. Created by this extraordinary fruit. Fruit. Its power, you see, is all I ever wanted. And with this, I will have everything. No, brother, you don't have everything. That last shred of humanity you still had, you just lost it. That is nothing but the pitiful cries of those without strength. Come to me, brother. I shall enlighten you. Dante! It's the freaking bat! Holy crap! It's the freaking bat! Look out, the bat's here! Oh god. Virgil. No, brother. You don't have everything. Virgil. Hey, is that damn fruit you been jabbering about? Doesn't look so special to me. Yup. This is where it all started. Should do just henchman lines as a funny short. That would be kind of funny. The Arkham henchman lines, yeah. Virgil. I could make that a skit. Hey, probably. Is that damn fruit you been jabbering about? Doesn't look so special to me. Yup. This is where it all started. That day Mother saved me and left you behind. The thing you don't know is, she tried to save you too. She kept searching and searching until it killed her. I have no recollection of this tale or this place. It's all an illusion created by this extraordinary fruit. Its power, you see, is all I ever wanted. And with this, I will have everything. No, brother. You don't have everything. That last shred of humanity you still had, you just lost it. That is nothing but the pitiful cries of those without strength. Come to me, brother. I shall enlighten you. Dante! Alright, that's pretty good. I've actually been replaying the Arkham games. I finished Arkham Asylum recently, the remastered version. Honestly, they need to just remaster it in 60 FPS with like just like complete updated overhaul on everything. It'd be so worth it. Because the remaster was like, yes, it looks better, but you can tell it's still like the guys that did the remaster, they did a good job, but there's certain things that the old like original game I think captured better. Cuz you can tell in Asylum like they upped the shit out of the contrast in in the remaster. Like the contrast for colors, they just like turned to 11. So everything like has a lot more color, which isn't bad, but then the faces kind of look like plastic almost. Like Joker's face looks kind of like it's wrapped in plastic, if that makes sense. It's like super shiny, high contrast. Game was great though. I had a lot of fun replaying it, honestly. I really like they did such a good job making the story stay in one place. And I mean, at the time when it originally came out, that game was ahead of its time. That was like they did that in the Unreal Engine. I think it was Unreal Engine 3. And now I'm playing through Arkham City remastered, or Return to Arkham City. And it's very good. That game's 60 FPS, thankfully. So I'm happy about that. And then I'm sure I will probably play through Arkham Knight. So yeah, it's been fun replaying through the Arkham games for sure. Arkham City is really good. Okay, so let's why isn't it? That's weird. Hold on. What?
You know?
I know, man. He was one of the best.
He was like a brother.
Yeah.
Hell of a way to go. I hear they dragged him out of the rubble.
Hang on. Who Who was dragged out of the rubble? Marky, who are you talking about?
He's the freaking man!
It's the freaking bat! Oh my god. It's the freaking bat! Wait, let me try this. Let me try. It's the freaking bat!
You know?
It's the freaking bat! It's like a Boston accent. It's the freaking bat!
I know. Who was dragged out of the rubble? Marky, who are you talking about?
He's the freaking man!
It's the freaking bat! It's the bat! Get him! Look out, it's the bat! It's the freaking bat! Batman, show yourself! Well, it's kind of crazy when you think about it, right? Even in a game like Arkham Asylum or Arkham City, you know, you think Kevin Conroy has a lot of lines as Batman, but think about all the different lines the henchmen have. And most of the henchmen are voiced, I'm pretty sure, by one guy, if I'm not mistaken. Let's look this up. Who voices the henchman? Yeah, Steve Bloom does. Wow, Steve Bloom does Killer Croc in Arkham City. Really? Oh, that's sick. Yeah, he does Waylon Jones, Killer Croc, GCPD officers. He does the inmates, the Joker thugs, Penguin thugs, Two-Face thugs, and Harley thugs. That's crazy. Wow. Hmm. Interesting. All right, well, I think we'll take a quick break and I'll be back in 10 minutes or so. So I'll see you guys then. Okay, and we are back. Um, hmm. I'm gonna put my sweater on. It's getting a little cold. You know what? I think I think maybe just today I want to stick to doing just a little extra reading. So I think we'll start our reading early. We'll get a bit more reading in for the day from our book. So yeah. 'Cause why not? This week we've been switching it up. So I figure why not for the last stream of the week, let's switch it up once more. Let me get something nice on here. All right. So everybody sit back, relax, and enjoy an extended reading session from yours truly. Okay, so We are continuing where we left off on our book called Mastery by Robert Greene. So, last where we left off, we were going over the different... Let's see here. Creative strategies. That's what we were going over. The following 5 strategies for developing such flexibility have been distilled from the lessons and stories of the most creative masters past and present. It would be wise to adapt all of them at some point, stretching and loosening the mind in all directions. So, basically talking about how to, utilize your mind and its creative power to the maximum. And it went over different examples. And I'm trying to think here. Another way to summarize what he said. Oh yeah, near the end of where we last left off, he talked about how it's important sometimes to just step away from your work and to do something completely different, no matter how, mundane or silly it might be, going for a walk or going for a run, or, you could be playing a game or watching a show. Just like something that you're just doing that's relaxing activity. If you do any of those things, you're more likely to come up with a potential solution to your problem you're trying to solve. Let me just open this up here. Just like All right. So let us continue. D. Alter your perspective. Consider thinking as an extended form of vision that allows us to see more of the world, and creativity as the ability to expand that vision beyond conventional boundaries. When we perceive an object, our eyes relay only a portion or outline of it to our brains, leaving our mind to fill in the rest, giving us a fast and relatively accurate assessment of what we are seeing. Our eyes are not paying deep attention to all of the details, but noticing patterns. Our thought processes, modeled after visual perception, use a similar shorthand. When an event occurs, or when we meet a new person, we do not stop to consider all aspects or details, but instead, we see an outline or pattern that fits into our expectations and past experiences. We fit the event or person into categories. As with vision, for us to have to think deeply about every new occurrence or perceived object would exhaust the brain. Unfortunately, we transfer this mental shorthand to almost everything. It is the main characteristic of the conventional mind. We might imagine that when we are engaged in solving a problem or realizing an idea, that we are being highly rational and thorough. But just as with our eyes, we are not aware of how deeply our thoughts fall into the same narrow grooves and the same categorizing shorthand. Creative people are those who have the capacity to resist this shorthand. They can look at a phenomenon from several different angles, noticing something we miss because we only look straight on. Sometimes, after one of their discoveries or inventions is made public, we are surprised at how obvious it seems, and wonder why no one else had thought of it before. This is because creative people are actually looking at what is hidden in plain sight, and not rushing to generalize and label. Whether such powers are natural or learned does not matter. The mind can be trained to loosen itself up and move outside the grooves. To do this, you must become aware of the typical patterns your mind falls into, and how you can break out of these patterns and alter your perspective through conscious effort. Once you engage in this process, you will be astonished at the ideas and creative powers it will unleash. The following are several of the most common patterns or shorthands, and how you can subvert them. Looking at the what instead of the how. Let us say that something goes wrong in a project of some sort. Our conventional tendency is to look for a single cause or a simple explanation, which then reveals to us how to fix the problem. If the book we are creating is not working out, we focus on the uninspired writing or the misguided concept behind it. Or if the company we work for is not performing well, we look at the products we are designing and marketing. Although we think we are being rational when we think in this way, most often problems are more complicated and holistic. We are simplifying them, based on the law that the mind always looks for shorthands. To look at the how instead of the what means focusing on the structure, how the parts relate to the whole. With the book, it may not be working out because it is organized poorly. The faulty organization, a reflection of ideas that have not been thought out. Our minds are a jumble, and this is reflected in the work. Thinking in this way, we are forced to go more deeply into the parts and how they relate to the overall concept. Improving the structure will improve the writing. With the company, we should look deeply at the organization itself. How well people communicate with one another, how quickly and fluidly information is passed along. If people are not communicating, if they are not on the same page, no amount of changes in the product or marketing will improve performance. Everything in nature has a structure, a way that the parts relate to one another, which is generally fluid and not so easy to conceptualize. Our minds naturally tend to separate things out, to think in terms of nouns instead of verbs. In general, you want to pay greater attention to the relationships between things, because that will give you a greater feel for the picture as a whole. It was in looking at the relationship between electricity and magnetism, and the relativity of their effects, that scientists created a whole revolution in scientific thinking. Michael Faraday to Albert Einstein, and the elaboration of field theories. leading from Michael Faraday to Albert Einstein. And the elaboration of field theories, sorry. This is a revolution that is waiting to happen on a more mundane level, in our everyday thinking. Rushing to generalities and ignoring details. Our minds are always hurrying to generalize about things, often based on the most minimal amounts of information. We form opinions quickly, in conformity with our previous opinions, and we do not pay great attention to the details. To combat this pattern, we must sometimes shift our focus from the macro to the micro, placing much greater emphasis on the details, the small picture. When Darwin wanted to make sure his theory was accurate, he devoted 8 long years of his life to the exclusive study of barnacles. Looking at this intensely microscopic glimpse of nature, he saw a perfect corroboration of his larger theory. When Leonardo da Vinci wanted to create a whole new style of painting, one that was more lifelike and emotional, he engaged in an obsessive study of details. He spent endless hours experimenting with forms of light, hitting various geometrical solids, to test how light could alter the appearance of objects. He devoted hundreds of pages in his notebooks to exploring the various gradations of shadows in every possible combination. He gave the same attention to the folds of a gown, the patterns in hair, the various minute changes in the expression of a human face. When we look at his work, we are not consciously aware of these efforts on his part, but we feel how much more alive and realistic his paintings are, as if he had captured reality. In general, try approaching a problem or idea with a much more open mind. Let your study of the details guide your thinking and shape your theories. Think of everything in nature, or in the world, as a kind of hologram, the smallest part reflecting something essential about the whole. Immersing yourself in details will combat the generalizing tendency of the brain and bring you closer to reality. Make sure, however, that you do not become lost in the details and lose sight of how they reflect the whole and fit into a larger idea. That is simply the other side of the same disease. Confirming paradigms and ignoring anomalies. In any field, there are inevitable paradigms, accepted ways of explaining reality. This is necessary. Without such paradigms, we would not be able to make sense of the world. But sometimes, these paradigms end up dominating our way of thinking. We routinely look for patterns in the world that confirm the paradigms we already believe in. The things that do not fit the paradigm, the anomalies, tend to be ignored or explained away. In truth, anomalies themselves contain the richest information. They often reveal to us the flaws in our paradigms and open up new ways of looking at the world. You must turn yourself into a detective, deliberately uncovering and looking at the very anomalies that people tend to disregard. In the late 19th century, several scientists noted the strange phenomenon of rare metals like uranium emitting luminescent rays of an unknown nature without any exposure to light. But nobody paid much attention to this. It was assumed that someday a rational explanation for this phenomenon would come up, one that fit with general theories of matter. but to the scientist Marie Curie, this anomaly was precisely the subject that needed to be investigated. She intuited that it contained the potential for expanding our concept of matter. For 4 long years, Marie, with the help of her husband, Pierre, devoted her life to studying this phenomenon, which she eventually named radioactivity. In the end, her discovery completely altered scientists' view on matter itself, which had previously been seen as containing static and fixed elements, but now was revealed to be much more volatile and complex. When Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the founders of Google, examined the search engines that existed in the mid-1990s, they focused exclusively on the seemingly trivial flaws in systems such as AltaVista, the anomalies. These search engines, which were the hottest startups of the time, ranked searches mostly based on the number of times the subject had been mentioned in a given article. Although this method sometimes produced results that were unhelpful or irrelevant, it was considered merely a quirk in the system that would eventually be ironed out or simply accepted. By focusing on this one anomaly, Page and Brin were able to see a glaring weakness in the whole concept, and to develop a much different ranking algorithm based on the number of times an article had been linked to, which completely transformed the effectiveness and use of the search engine. For Charles Darwin, the crux of his theory came from looking at mutations. It is the strange and random variation in nature that often sets a species off in a new evolutionary direction. Think of anomalies as the creative form of such mutations. They often represent the future, but to our eyes, they seem strange. By studying them, you can illuminate this future before anyone else. Fixating on what is present, ignoring what is absent. In the Arthur Conan Doyle story, Silver Blaze, Sherlock Holmes solves a crime by paying attention to what did not happen. The family dog had not barked. This meant that the murderer must have been someone the dog knew. What this story illustrates is how the average person does not generally pay attention to what we shall call negative cues. What should have happened but did not. It is our natural tendency to fixate on positive information, to notice only what we can see and hear. It takes a creative type such as Holmes to think more broadly and rigorously, pondering the missing information in an event, visualizing this absence as easily as we see the presence of something. For centuries, doctors considered diseases exclusively as something stemming from outside the body, attacking it, a contagious germ, a draft of cold air, miasmic vapors, and so on. Treatment depended on finding drugs of some sort that could counteract the harmful effects of these environmental agents of disease. Then, in the early 20th century, the biochemist Frederick Gowland Hopkins, studying the effects of scurvy, had the idea to reverse this perspective. What caused the problem in this particular disease, he speculated, was not what was attacking from the outside, but what was missing from the body, within the body itself. In this case, what came to be known as vitamin C. Thinking creatively, he did not look at what was present, but precisely at what was absent, in order to solve the problem. This led to his groundbreaking work on vitamins and completely altered our concept of health. In business, the natural tendency is to look at what is already out there in the marketplace and to think of how we can make it better or cheaper. The real trick the equivalent of seeing the negative Q, is to focus our attention on some need that is not currently being met, or what is absent. This requires more thinking and is harder to conceptualize. But the rewards can be immense if we hit upon this unfulfilled need. One way to begin such a thought process is to look at new and available technology in the world, and to imagine how it could be applied in a much different way. Meeting a need that we sense exists, but that is not overly apparent. If the need is too obvious, others will already be working on it. In the end, the ability to alter our perspective is a function of our imagination. We have to learn how to imagine more possibilities than we generally consider. Being as loose and radical with this process as we can, this pertains as much to inventors and business people as it does to artists. Look at the case of Henry Ford, a highly creative thinker in his own right. In the early stages of the manufacturing of automobiles, Henry Ford imagined a whole different kind of business than existed at the time. He wanted to mass produce the automobile, helping to create the consumer culture he felt was coming. But the men in his factories would average some 12.5 hours to manufacture a single automobile, which was far too slow to achieve his goal. One day, trying to think of ways to speed up production, Ford watched his men at work as they scrambled around as fast as they could to assemble an automobile as it stood on a platform. Ford did not focus on the tools that could be improved, or how to get the men to move faster, or the need to hire more workers, the kinds of small changes that would have not altered the dynamic enough for mass production. Instead, he imagined something completely different. In his mind, he suddenly saw the cars moving and the men standing still, each worker doing a small portion of the job as the car moved from position to position. Within days, he tried this out and realized what he was onto. By the time it was fully instituted in 1914, the Ford factory could now produce a car in 90 minutes. Over the years, he would speed up this miraculous saving of time. As you work to free your mind and give it the power to alter its perspective, remember the following. The emotions we experience at any time have an inordinate influence of how we perceive the world. That's actually a very good quote. Wow. I'm going to read that again. The emotions we experience at any time have an inordinate influence on how we perceive the world. If we feel afraid, we tend to see more of the potential dangers in some action. If we feel particularly bold, we tend to ignore the potential risks. What you must do then is not only alter your mental perspective, but reverse your emotional one as well. For instance, if you are experiencing a lot of resistance and setbacks in your work, try to see this as in fact something that is quite positive and productive. These difficulties will make you tougher and more aware of the flaws you need to correct. In physical exercise, resistance is a way to make the body stronger, and it is the same with the mind. Play a similar reversal on good fortune, seeing the potential dangers of becoming soft, addicted to attention, and so forth. These reversals will free up the imagination to see more possibilities, which will affect you do. If you see setbacks as opportunities, you are more likely to make that a reality. That's another really good quote. If you see setbacks as opportunities, you are more likely to make that a reality. That's something I try to do. But I definitely need to do more. Setbacks can be very frustrating. But you see them as opportunities, then your room to grow is limitless. E. Revert to primal forms of intelligence. As discussed in the introduction, see page 6, or our most primitive ancestors developed various forms of intelligence that predated the invention of language, which aided them in the harsh struggle for survival. They thought mostly in terms of visual images, and became highly adept at noticing patterns and discerning important details in their environment. Roaming over vast spaces, they developed the ability to think spatially, and learned how to orient themselves in varied landscapes, using landmarks and the position of the sun. They were able to think in mechanical terms, and became supremely skilled at coordinating the hand and eye in making things. With the invention of language, the intellectual powers of our ancestors were vastly enhanced. Thinking in words, they could imagine more possibilities in the world around them, which they could then communicate and act on. The human brain thus developed along these evolutionary lines as a multi-use, immensely flexible instrument that is able to think on various levels, combining many forms of intelligence with all of the senses. But somewhere along the way, a problem developed. We slowly lost our previous flexibility and became largely dependent on words for our thinking. In the process, we lost our connection to the senses, sight, smell, touch, that once played a vital role in our intelligence. Language is a system largely designed for social communication. It is based on conventions that everyone can agree upon. It is somewhat rigid and stable, so that it allows us to communicate with minimum friction. But when it comes to the incredible complexity and fluidity of life, it can often fail us. The grammar of language locks us into certain forms of logic and ways of thinking. As the writer Sidney Hook put it, quote, "When Aristotle drew up his table of categories, which to him represented the grammar of existence, he was really projecting the grammar of the Greek language on the cosmos." End quote. Linguists have enumerated the high number of concepts that have no particular word to describe them in the English language. If there are no words for certain concepts, we tend to not think of them. And so language is a tool that is often too tight and constricting compared to the multi-layered powers of intelligence we naturally possess. In the last few hundred years, with the rapid development of the sciences, technology, and the arts, we humans have had to use our brains to solve increasingly complex problems. And those who are truly creative have developed the ability to think beyond language, to access the lower chambers of consciousness, to revert to those primal forms of intelligence that served us for millions of years. According to the great mathematician Jacques Hadamard, most mathematicians think in terms of images, creating a visual equivalent of the theorem they are trying to work out. Michael Faraday was a powerful visual thinker. When he came up with the idea of electromagnetic lines of force, anticipating the field theories of the 20th century, he saw them literally in his mind's eye before he wrote about them. The structure of the periodic table came to the chemist Dmitry Mendeleev in a dream, where he literally saw the elements laid out before his eyes in a visual scheme. The list of great thinkers who relied upon images is enormous, and perhaps the greatest of them all was Albert Einstein, who once wrote, quote, "The words of the language, as they are written or spoken, do not seem to play any role in my mechanism of thought. The physical entities, which seem to serve as elements in thought, are certain signs and more or less clear images which can be voluntarily reproduced and combined." Inventors such as Thomas Edison and Henry Ford thought not only in visual terms, but also in three-dimensional models. The great electrical and mechanical engineer Nikola Tesla could supposedly visualize in minute detail a machine and all of its working parts, which he would then proceed to invent according to what he had imagined. Okay, there we go. Finally, he mentions Tesla. Finally. I was gonna say, if you're gonna talk about creative minds and geniuses to refer to, you gotta mention Nikola Tesla. Guy was way ahead of his time. Way ahead of his time. Genius. The reason for this regression to visual forms of thinking is simple. Human working memory is limited. We can only keep in mind several pieces of information at the same time. Through an image, we can simultaneously imagine many things at once, at a glance, as opposed to words, which can be impersonal and rigid. Sorry guys, I'm getting a call. I will have to mute myself for a moment. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that, guys. I guess that counts as a break. Early break I took. All good now, though. All good now. It's just my buddy that called me. Okay. Let us continue. Where were we? We read that already. Yes, here we go. Okay. The reason for this regression to visual forms of thinking is simple. Human working memory is limited. We can only keep in mind several pieces of information at the same time. Through an image, we can simultaneously imagine many things at once, at a glance, as opposed to words which can be impersonal and rigid. A visualization is something we create, something that serves our particular needs of the moment, and can represent an idea in a way that is more fluid and real than simply words. The use of images to make sense of the world is perhaps our most primitive form of intelligence, and can help us conjure up ideas that we can later verbalize. Conjure up ideas that we can later verbalize. Words also are abstract. An image or model makes our idea suddenly more concrete, which satisfies our need to see and feel things with our senses. Even if thinking in this way is not natural to you, using diagrams and models to help further the creative process can be immensely productive. Early in his research, Charles Darwin, who was normally not a visual thinker, came up with an image to help him conceptualize evolution: an irregularly branching tree. This signified that all of life started from one seed, some branches of the tree ending, others still growing and sending off new shoots. He literally drew such a tree in a notebook. The image proved extremely helpful, and he returned to it time and again. The molecular biologists James D. Watson and Francis Crick created a large three-dimensional model of the DNA molecule with which they could interact and alter. This model played an important role in their discovery and description of DNA. This use of images, diagrams, and models can help reveal to you patterns in your thinking and new directions you can take that you would find hard to imagine exclusively in words. With your idea exteriorized in a relatively simple diagram or model, you can see your entire concept projected at once, which will help you organize masses of information and add new dimensions to your concept. This conceptual image or model can be the result of hard thinking, which is how Watson and Crick devised their three-dimensional DNA model, or it can come in moments of fringe awareness from a dream or a daydream. In the latter case, such visualizations require a degree of relaxation on your part. If you think too hard, you will come up with something too literal. Let your attention wander. Play around the edges of your concept. Loosen up your hold on consciousness, and allow images to come to you. Early in his career, Michael Faraday took lessons in drawing and painting. He did this so he could recreate the experiments he had witnessed at various lectures. But he discovered that drawing helped him think in many ways. The hand-brain connection is something deeply wired within us. When we attempt to sketch something, we must observe it closely, gaining a feel through our fingers of how to bring it to life. Such practice can help you think in visual terms and free your mind from its constant verbalizations. To Leonardo da Vinci, drawing and thinking were synonymous. One day, the writer and polymath Johann Wolfgang von Goethe made a curious discovery about the creative process of his friend, the great German writer, Friedrich Schiller. Paying a visit to Schiller's home, he was told that the writer was not in, but would return shortly. Goethe decided to wait for him and sat down at Schiller's desk. He began to be assailed by a strange feeling of faintness, his head slowly spinning. If he moved to the window, the sensation went away. Suddenly, he realized that some kind of weird and nauseating smell was emanating from a drawer of the desk. When he opened it, he was shocked to see that it was full of rotten apples, some in an extreme state of decay. When Schiller's wife came into the room, he asked her about the apples and the stench. She told Goethe that she herself filled the drawers with these apples on a regular basis. Her husband delighted in the smell, and he found he did his most creative work while inhaling the fumes. Okay, that's interesting. Alright then. He loved the smell of rotten apples. Other artists and thinkers have devised similar peculiar aids to their creative process. When doing his deepest thinking about the theory of relativity, Albert Einstein liked to hold on to a rubber ball that he would periodically squeeze in tandem with the straining of his mind. In order to work, the writer Samuel Johnson required that he had on his desk a cat, which he would periodically stroke to make it purr, and a slice of orange. Supposedly, only these various sensual cues could properly stimulate him for his work. I just remembered something I've got to message my friend about right now before I forget. Okay, no, I did say it. Unsalted butter. Okay. I mean, if he does get salted butter, it's not the end of the world, but... okay. These examples... supposedly, only these various sensual cues could properly stimulate him for his work. These examples are all related to the phenomenon of synesthesia, moments in which the stimulation of one sense provokes another. For instance, we hear a particular sound and it makes us think of a color. Studies have indicated that synesthesia is far more prevalent among artists and high-level thinkers. Some have speculated that synesthesia represents a high degree of interconnectivity in the brain, which also plays a role in intelligence. Creative people do not simply think in words, but use all of their senses, their entire bodies in the process. They find sense cues that stimulate their thoughts on many levels, whether it be the smell of something strong, whether it be the smell of something strong, or the tactile feel of a rubber ball. What this means is that they are more open to alternative ways of thinking, creating, and sensing the world. They allow themselves a broader range of sense experience. You must expand as well as your notion of thinking and creativity beyond the confines of words and intellectualizations. Stimulating your brain and senses from all directions will help unlock your natural creativity and help revive your original mind. Step 3. The creative breakthrough. Tension and insight. In the creative lives of almost all masters, we hear of the following pattern. They begin a project with an initial intuition and an excitement about its potential success. Their project is deeply connected to something personal and primal, and seems very much alive to them. As their initial nervous excitement inspires them in certain directions, they begin to give their concept shape, narrowing down its possibilities, and channeling their energies into ideas that grow more and more distinct. They enter a phase of heightened focus, but masters inevitably possess another quality that complicates the work process. They are not easily satisfied by what they are doing. While able to feel excitement, they also feel doubt about the worthiness of their work. They have high internal standards. As they progress, they begin to detect flaws and difficulties in their original idea that they had not foreseen. As the process begins to become more conscious and less intuitive, the idea once so alive in them starts to seem somewhat dead or stale. This is a difficult feeling to endure, and so they work even harder, trying to force a solution. The harder they try, the more inner tension and frustration they create. The sense of staleness grows. In the beginning, their mind teemed with rich associations. Now, it seemed condemned to a narrow track of thought that does not spark the same connections. At certain points in this process, lesser types would simply give up or settle for what they have, a mediocre and half-realized project. But masters are stronger. They have been through this before, and on an unconscious level, they understand that they must plow forward, and that the frustration, or the feeling of being blocked, has a purpose. At a particular high point of tension, they let go for a moment. This could be as simple as stopping work and going to sleep. Or it could mean deciding to take a break, or to temporarily work on something else. What almost inevitably happens in such moments is that the solution, the perfect idea for completing the work, comes to them. After 10 long years of incessant thinking on the problem of general relativity, Albert Einstein decided one evening to simply give up. He had had enough. It was beyond him. He went to bed early, and when he awoke, the solution suddenly came to him. The composer Richard Wagner had worked so hard on his opera, Das Rheingold, that he became completely blocked. Beyond frustration, he took a long walk in the woods, lay down, and fell asleep. In a sort of half-dream, he felt himself sinking in swiftly, He felt himself sinking in swiftly flowing water. The rushing sounds formed into musical chords. He awoke, terrified by a feeling of drowning. He hurried home and noted down the chords of his dream, which seemed to perfectly conjure up the sound of rushing water. These chords became the prelude of the opera, a leitmotif that runs throughout it, and one of the most astonishing pieces he had ever written. That's fucking cool. He took a nap in the woods and heard the sound of rushing water and took the chords from the rushing sounds and put them in his piece. That was the solution. That's crazy. That's so cool. These stories are so common as to indicate something essential about the brain and how it reaches certain peaks of creativity. We can explain this pattern in the following way. If we remained as excited as we were in the beginning of our project, maintaining that intuitive feel that sparked it all, we would never be able to take the necessary distance to look at our work objectively and improve upon it. Losing that initial verve causes us to work and rework the idea. It forces us to not settle too early on an easy solution. The mounting frustration and tightness that comes from single-minded devotion to one problem or idea will naturally lead to a breaking point. We realize we are getting nowhere. Such moments are signals from the brain to let go, for however long a period necessary. And most creative people, consciously or unconsciously, accept this. Excuse me. When we let go, we are not aware that below the surface of consciousness, the ideas and associations we had built up continue to bubble and incubate. With the feeling of tightness gone, the brain can momentarily return to that initial feeling of excitement and aliveness, which by now has been greatly enhanced by all of our hard work. The brain can now find the proper synthesis to the work, the one that was eluding us because we had become too tight in our approach. Perhaps the idea for the watery sounds in Das Rheingold had stirred before in different forms in Wagner's brain, as he strained to find the right opening. Only by giving up the chase and falling asleep in the woods was he able to access his unconscious mind and allow an idea that had been brewing there to surface by way of a dream. The key is to be aware of this process, and to encourage yourself to go as far as you can with your doubts, your reworkings, and your strained efforts, knowing the value and purpose of the frustration and creative blocks you are facing. Think of yourself as your own Zen master. Such masters would often beat their pupils and deliberately lead them to points of maximum doubt and inner tension, knowing such moments often precede enlightenment. Among the thousands of stories of great insights and discoveries, perhaps the strangest one of all is that of Évariste Galois, a promising student of mathematics in France, who, in his teens, revealed exceptional brilliance in algebra. In 1831, at the age of 20, he became embroiled in a quarrel over a woman, which resulted in his being challenged to a duel. The night before the duel, certain he was going to die, Galois sat down and tried to summarize all of the ideas on algebraic equations that had been troubling him for several years. Suddenly, the ideas flowed, and even new ones came to him. He wrote all night at a feverish pitch. The next day, as he had foreseen, he died in the duel. But in the ensuing years, his notes were read and published, leading to a complete revolution in higher algebra. Some of his scribbled notes indicated directions in mathematics that were so far ahead of his time, it is hard to fathom where they came from. Can you imagine? My man here got himself into a duel, and because he was like, yeah, well, I'm gonna probably die, that gave him the motivation to write all that out. Yeah, I guess there is no greater motivator than imminent death, I suppose, to get out all your ideas and thoughts. This is a somewhat extreme example, yeah. No kidding. This is a somewhat extreme example, but the story reveals something elemental about the need for tension. The feeling that we have endless time to complete our work has an insidious and debilitating effect on our minds. Our attention and thoughts become diffused. Our lack of intensity makes it hard for the brain to jolt into a higher gear. The connections do not occur. For this purpose, you must always try to work with deadlines, whether real or manufactured. Faced with the slenderest amount of time to reach the end, the mind rises to the level you require. Ideas crowd upon one another. You don't have the luxury of feeling frustrated. Every day represents an intense challenge, and every morning, you wake up with original ideas and associations to push you along. If you don't have such deadlines, manufacture them for yourself. The inventor Thomas Edison understood how much better he worked under pressure. He would deliberately talk to the press about an idea before it was ready. This would create some publicity and excitement in the public as to the possibilities of the proposed invention. If he dropped the ball or let too much time pass, his reputation would suffer. And so, his mind would spark into higher gear, and he would make it happen. In such cases, your mind is like the army that is now backed up against the sea or a mountain and cannot retreat. Sensing the proximity of death, it will fight harder than ever. Emotional pitfalls. When we arrive at the creative active phase in our career, we are confronted by new challenges that are not simply mental or intellectual. The work is more demanding. We are on our own and the stakes are higher. Our work is now more public and highly scrutinized. We might have the most brilliant ideas and a mind capable of handling the greatest intellectual challenges. But if we are not careful, we will tumble into emotional pitfalls. We will grow insecure, overly anxious about people's opinions, or excessively self-confident. Or we will become bored and lose a taste for the hard work that is always necessary. Once we fall into these traps, it is hard to extricate ourselves. We lose the necessary perspective to see where we have gone wrong. Better to be aware of these pitfalls in advance and never step into them. The following are the 6 most common pitfalls that threaten us along the way. Number 1. Complacency. In childhood, the world seemed like an enchanted place. Everything that we encountered had an intensity to it, and sparked feelings of wonder. Now, from our mature viewpoint, we see this wonderment as naive, a quaint quality we have outgrown with our sophistication and vast experience of the real world. Such words as enchantment or wonder cause us to snicker. But imagine for an instant that the opposite is the case. The fact that life began on its own so many billions of years ago, that a conscious species such as ours ever came about and evolved into our present form, that we have visited the moon and come to understand vital laws of physics and so on, all of this should continually fill us with awe. Our skeptical, cynical attitudes can actually cut us off from so many interesting questions and from reality itself. After we pass through a rigorous apprenticeship and begin to flex our creative muscles, we cannot help but feel satisfaction in what we have learned and how far we have progressed. We naturally begin to take for granted certain ideas we have learned and developed. Slowly, we stop asking the same kinds of questions that plagued us earlier on. We already know the answers. We feel ever so superior. Unknown to ourselves, the mind slowly narrows and tightens as complacency creeps into the soul. And although we may have achieved public acclaim for our past work, we stifle our own creativity and never get it back. Fight this downhill tendency as much as you can by upholding the value of active wonder. Constantly remind yourself of how little you truly know, and of how mysterious the world remains. Conservatism. If you gain any kind of attention or success for your work in this phase, you face the great danger of creeping conservatism. This danger comes in several forms. You begin to fall in love with the ideas and strategies that worked for you in the past. Why risk changing your style in midstream or adapting a new approach to your work? Better to stick to the tried and true. You also will have a reputation to protect. Better to not say or do anything that might rock the boat. You become subtly addicted to the material comforts you have acquired, and before you know it, you uphold ideas that you think you believe in, but that really are tied to your need to please the audience, or your sponsors, or whomever. Creativity is, by its nature, an act of boldness and rebellion. You are not accepting the status quo or conventional wisdom. You are playing with the world. You are playing with the very rules you have learned, experimenting and testing the boundaries. The world is dying for bolder ideas, for people who are not afraid to speculate and investigate. Creeping conservatism will narrow your searches, tether you to comfortable ideas, and create a downward spiral. As the creative spark leaves you, you will find yourself clutching even more forcefully to dead ideas, past successes, and the need to maintain your status. Make creativity rather than comfort your goal, and you will ensure far more success for the future. Number 3, dependency. In the apprenticeship phase, you relied upon mentors and those above you to supply you with the necessary standards of judgment for your field. But if you are not careful, you will carry this need for approval into the next phase. Instead of relying on the master for evaluation of your work, you, ever insecure about your work and how it will be judged, come to rely on the opinions of the public. It is not that you must ignore these judgments, but that you must first work hard to develop internal standards and a high degree of independence. You have the capacity to see your own work with some distance. When the public reacts, you can distinguish between what is worth paying attention to and what you should ignore. What you want in the end is to internalize the voice of your master so that you become both teacher and pupil. If you fail to do so, you will have no internal gauge as to the value of your work, and you will be blown here and there by the opinions of others, never to find yourself. Number 4, impatience. This is perhaps the single greatest pitfall of them all. This quality continually haunts you, no matter how disciplined you might think you are. You will convince yourself that your work is essentially over and well done, and when really, it is your impatience speaking and coloring your judgment. You tend to lose the energy you had when you were younger and hungrier. Unconsciously, you will veer towards reputation, reusing the same ideas and processes as a kind of shortcut. Unfortunately, the creative process requires continual intensity and vigor. Each exercise or problem or project is different. Hurrying to the end or warming up old ideas will ensure a mediocre result. Leonardo da Vinci understood the dangers of such impatience. He adopted as his motto the expression ostinato rigore, which translates as, quote, stubborn rigor, or, quote, tenacious application. Ostinato rigore. For every project he involved himself in, and by the end of his life, they numbered in the thousands. He repeated this to himself, so he would attack each one with the same vigor and tenacity. The best way to neutralize our natural impatience is to cultivate a kind of pleasure in pain. Like an athlete, you come to enjoy rigorous practice, pushing past your limits, and resisting the easy way out. Number 5. Grandiosity. Sometimes, greater danger comes from success and praise than from criticism. If we learn to handle criticism well, it can strengthen us and help us become aware of flaws in our work. Praise generally does harm. Ever so slowly, the emphasis shifts from the joy of the creative process to the love of attention and to our ever-inflating ego. Without realizing it, we alter and shape our work to attract the praise that we crave. We fail to understand the element of luck that always goes into success. We often depend on being in the right place at the right time. Instead, we come to think that our brilliance has naturally drawn our success and attention, as if it were indeed fated. Once the ego inflates, it will only come back to earth through some jarring failure, which will equally scar us. To avoid this fate, you must have some perspective. There are always greater geniuses out there than yourself. Luck certainly played a role, as did the help of your mentor and all those in the past who paved the way. What must ultimately motivate you is the work itself and the process. Public attention is actually a nuisance and a distraction. Such an attitude is the only defense against falling into the trap set by our ego. Inflexibility, number 6. Being creative involves certain paradoxes. You must know your field inside and out, and yet be able to question its most entrenched assumptions. You must be somewhat naive to entertain certain questions, and optimistic that you will solve the problem at hand. At the same time, you must regularly doubt that you have achieved your goal and subject your work to intense self-criticism. All of this requires a great deal of flexibility, which means you must not get too hung up on any single frame of mind. You must bend to the moment and adopt the attitude appropriate to the moment. Flexibility is not an easy or natural quality to develop. Once you spend a period of time being excited and hopeful about an idea, you will find it hard to shift to a more critical position. Once you look at your work with intensity and doubt, you will lose your optimism and your love of what you do. Avoiding these problems takes practice and often some experience. When you have pushed past the doubt before, you will find it easier the next time. In any event, you must avoid emotional extremes and find a way to feel optimism and doubt at the same time. A difficult sensation to describe in words, but something all masters have experienced. We are all in search of feeling more connected to reality, to other people, the times we live in, the natural world, our character, and our own uniqueness. Our culture increasingly tends to separate us from these realities in various ways. We indulge in drugs or alcohol, or engage in dangerous sports or risky behavior, just to wake ourselves up from the sleep of our daily existence and feel a heightened sense of connection to reality. In the end, however, the most satisfying and powerful way to feel this connection is through creative activity. Engaged in the creative process, we feel more alive than ever because we are making something and not merely consuming. Masters of the small reality we create, in doing this work, we are in fact creating ourselves. Although it involves much pain, the pleasure that comes from the overall process of creativity is of an intensity that makes us want to repeat it. That is why creative people return again and again to such endeavors, despite all of the anxiety and doubt they stir up. It is nature's way of rewarding us for the effort. If we had no such rewards, people would not engage in such activity, and mankind would suffer irreparably from this loss. This pleasure will be your reward as well, to whatever degree you pursue the process. Strategies for the creative, active phase. Quote, "Don't think about why you question. Simply don't stop questioning. Don't worry about what you can't answer, and don't try to explain what you can't know. Curiosity is its own reason. Aren't you in awe when you contemplate the mysteries of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure behind reality? And this is the miracle of the human mind, to use its constructions, concepts, and formulas as tools to explain what man sees, feels, and touches. Try to comprehend a little more each day. Have holy curiosity." End quote. Albert Einstein. As future masters emerge from their apprenticeships, they all face the same dilemma. No one has ever really instructed them about the creative process, and there are no real books or teachers to turn to. Struggling on their own to become more active and imaginative with the knowledge they have gained, they evolve their own process, one that suits their temperament and the field they are working in. And in these creative evolutions, we can detect some basic patterns and lessons for us all. The following stories of 9 masters reveal 9 different strategic approaches to the same goal. The methods they employ may be applied to any field because they are connected to the creative powers of the brain that we all possess. Try to absorb each one of them, enriching your own knowledge of the process of mastery and widening your creative arsenal. Number 1. The authentic voice. As a boy growing up in North Carolina, John Coltrane, 1926 to 1967, took up music as a kind of hobby. He was an anxious young man who needed an outlet for all of his pent-up energy. He started with the alto horn, moved to the clarinet, and finally settled on the alto saxophone. He played for a school band, and to those who heard him play back then, he was a completely insignificant member of the group. Then, in 1943, his family moved to Philadelphia. One evening, shortly after the move, Coltrane happened to catch a performance of the great bebop saxophonist, Charlie Parker, and he was instantly transfixed. See page 31. He had never heard such playing. He had never imagined such possibilities in music. Parker had a way of lilting and singing through his saxophone, as if the instrument had melded with his own voice. and in hearing him play, it seemed possible to feel what he was feeling. From that moment on, John Coltrane was a man possessed. Following in Parker's footsteps, in his own way, would now be his life's task. Coltrane was not sure how he could reach such heights, but he knew that Parker was an intense student of all types of music, and practiced the instrument harder than anyone. This fit in nicely with Coltrane's own inclinations. Always being somewhat of a loner, he loved nothing more than to study and expand his knowledge. He started taking theory lessons at a local music store, and he began to practice night and day, with such assiduity that his reeds would become red from blood. Holy shit. In the time in between practicing, he went to the public library and listened to classical music, hungry to absorb every conceivable harmonic possibility. He practiced scales like a fiend, driving his family insane. He took scale book exercises designed for the piano and used them for the saxophone, going through all of the keys in Western music. He began to get gigs in bands in Philadelphia, getting his first real break in Dizzy Gillespie's orchestra. Gillespie made him change to the tenor sax to get more of the Charlie Parker sound, and within a few months, Coltrane had mastered the new instrument through endless hours of practice. Over the next 5 years, Coltrane would bounce around from one band to another, each with its different style and repertoire of songs. This wandering existence suited him well. He felt as if he needed to internalize every conceivable style of music. But this also caused him some problems. When it came time for him to perform a solo, he was quite awkward and halting. He had an unusual sense of rhythm, a hopping and skipping style that was peculiar to him, and not quite right for the bands he was playing for. Feeling self-conscious, when it came time for a solo, he would resort to imitating someone else's way of playing. Every few months, he would suddenly experiment with a new sound that he had heard. To some, it seemed like young Coltrane had gotten lost in all of the most famous jazz quartet. Seemed Coltrane had gotten lost in all of his studying and roaming about. In 1955, Miles Davis, leader of the most famous jazz quartet at the time, decided to take a chance and invited Coltrane into his group. Like everyone else, he knew that the young man... Like everyone else, he knew that the young man was the most technically brilliant player around, the result of so many hours of practice. But he also detected in his work something strange, a new kind of voice straining to come out. He encouraged Coltrane to go his own way and never look back. In the months to come, Davis would have moments of regret. He had let loose something that was hard to integrate into his group. Coltrane had a way of starting chords in the strangest places. He would alternate fast passages with long tones, giving the impression that several voices were coming through the saxophone at once. No one had ever heard such a sound. His tone was equally peculiar. He had his own way of tightly clenching the mouthpiece, making it seem as if it were his own gravelly voice that was emerging from the instrument. His playing had an undercurrent of anxiety and aggression, which gave his music a sense of urgency. Although many were put off by this strange new sound, some critics began to recognize something exciting in it. One writer described what came out of Coltrane's saxophone as sheets of sound, as if he were playing groups of notes at once and sweeping the listener away with his music. Although he was now gaining recognition and attention, Coltrane continued to feel restless and uncertain. Through all of his years of practicing and playing, he had been searching for something he could hardly put into words. He wanted to personalize his sound to the extreme, to make it the perfect embodiment of how he was feeling. Often emotions of a spiritual and transcendental nature, and thus hard to verbalize. At moments his playing would come alive, but at other times the sensation of his own voice would elude him. Perhaps all of his knowledge was in fact cramping and inhibiting him. In 1959, he left Miles Davis to form his own quartet. From now on, he would experiment and try almost anything until he found the sound that he had been looking for. His song, Giant Steps, on his first major album of the same name, was an exercise in unconventional music, using peculiar chord progressions that moved in thirds. With constant key and chord changes, the music was impelled frantically forward. Its third-related chord progressions became known as Coltrane changes, and are still used by musicians as a template for jazz improvisation. The album was a huge success. Several pieces from it went on to become jazz standards, but the experiment left Coltrane cold. He now wanted to return to melody, to something freer and more expressive, and he found himself going back to the music of his early childhood, Negro spirituals. In 1960, he created his first popular hit, an extended version of the song My Favorite Things from the smash Broadway musical The Sound of Music. He played it on the soprano saxophone in a style that seemed almost East Indian, blending in as well a touch of Negro spirituals, all of which his strange propensity for chord changes and rapid scales. It was a weird blend of experimental and popular music, unlike anything anyone else had done. Coltrane was now like an alchemist, involved in an almost impossible quest to discover the essence of music itself, to make it express it more deeply and directly the emotions he was feeling, to connect it to the unconscious. And slowly, it seemed like he was getting closer to his goal. His ballad, Alabama, written in response to the 1963 bombing by the Ku Klux Klan of a church in Birmingham, Alabama, seemed to capture something essential about the moment and the mood of the time. It seemed to be the incarnation of sadness and despair. A year later, his album, A Love Supreme, appeared. It was recorded in one day, and making the music was like a religious experience for him. It had everything he was aiming for. Extended movements that went as long as it felt natural to do so. Something novel in jazz. And a trance-like effect on listeners, while still containing the hard-driving sound and technical brilliance he was known for. It was an album that expressed that spiritual element he could not put into words. It became a sensation, drawing a whole new audience to his music. People who saw his live performances in this period proclaimed the uniqueness of the experience. As the saxophonist Joe McPhee described it, quote, "I thought I was going to die from the emotion. I thought I was just going to explode right in the place. The energy level kept building up, and I thought, God Almighty, I can't take it." End quote. Audiences would go wild, some people screaming at the intensity of the sound. It seemed as if the music from Coltrane's saxophone was a direct translation of some deep mood or feeling of his. And that he could move the audience in whatever direction he wanted with it. No other jazz artist had such an effect on audiences. As part of the Coltrane phenomenon, every change he introduced into jazz was suddenly adopted as the latest trend. Extended songs, larger groups, tambourines and bells, Eastern sounds, and so on. The man who had spent 10 long years absorbing the styles of all forms of music and jazz now had become the trendsetter for others. Coltrane's meteoric career, however, was cut short in 1967, when he died at the age of 40 of liver cancer. That's really sad. You know, one thing that I find in common with a lot of these stories I've heard is a lot of these people died young. A lot of these like creative minds, brilliant minds, geniuses, they didn't live long at all. I mean, look at Johann Sebastian Bach. Look at Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. He lived only until he was 35. And for the first 25 years of his life, he never really got the chance to express his true creative passion. It was only the last decade of his life. And Coltrane, I mean, he lived slightly longer, but 40 it's sad. In Coltrane's era, jazz had become a celebration of individuality. Players like Charlie Parker made the jazz solo the centerpiece of any work. In the solo, the player would pour out his own unique voice. But what is this voice that comes through so clearly in the work of the greats? It is not something we can exactly put into words. Musicians are expressing something deep about their nature, their particular psychological makeup, even their unconscious. It comes out in their style, their unique rhythms and phrasings. But this voice does not emerge from just being oneself and letting loose. A person who would take up an instrument and try to express this quality right away would only produce noise. Jazz, or any other musical form, is a language, with conventions and vocabulary. And so, the extreme paradox is that those who impress the most with their individuality, John Coltrane, at the top, are the ones who first completely submerge their character in a long apprenticeship. In Coltrane's case, this process can be broken up neatly. Just over 10 years of an intense apprenticeship, followed by 10 years of perhaps the most amazing creative explosion in modern music, up until his death. By spending so long learning structure, developing technique, and absorbing every possible style and way of playing, Coltrane built up a vast vocabulary. Once all of this became hardwired into his nervous system, his mind could focus on higher things at an increasingly rapid pace. He could bend all of the techniques he had learned into something more personal. In being so open to exploring and trying things out, he could discover in a serendipitous fashion those musical ideas that suited him. With all that he had learned and mastered, he could combine ideas and styles in unique ways. By being patient and following the process, individual expression flowed out of him naturally. He personalized every genre he worked in, from blues to Broadway show tunes. His authentic voice, with its anxious, urgent tone, was a reflection of his uniqueness at birth, and came to him in a lengthy, organic process. By expressing his deepest self and his most primal emotions, he created a visceral effect on listeners. Understand, the greatest impediment to creativity is your impatience, the almost inevitable desire to hurry up the process, express something, and make a splash. What happens in such a case is that you do not master the basics. You have no real vocabulary at your disposal. What you mistake for being creative and distinctive is more likely an imitation of other people's style, or personal rantings that do not really express anything. Audiences, however, are hard to fool. They feel the lack of rigor, the imitative quality, the urge to get attention, and they turn their backs, or give the mildest praise that quickly passes. The best route is to follow Coltrane and to love learning for its own sake. The best route is to follow Coltrane and to love learning for its own sake. Anyone who would spend 10 years absorbing the techniques and conventions of their field, trying them out, mastering them, exploring and personalizing them, would inevitably find their authentic voice and give birth to something unique and expressive. And I think that is a good place for us to end our reading for today. Very interesting story. Lots of also interesting things that we learned in this chapter. Let's see, where did we start? We looked at altering our perspective, of looking for things that aren't there instead of things that are out of place versus things that are in place. Like Sherlock Holmes when he went to one person's house to solve a mystery and he noticed the detail that no one paid attention to. The stuff that was one detail that was missing. A dog not barking when the person entered the home. We also looked at how we often try to generalize things to make ourselves process information more easily, and how it's important to open our minds up to anomalies or things or events or people that might seem out of place to many, but could provide a lot more insightful knowledge to us. Yeah, and sorry, it's specifically for the Sherlock Holmes thing, it is paying attention to what did not happen. The family dog had not barked. So being able to pay attention to details like that, of what didn't happen, versus just things that happen. Also talking about primal forms of intelligence. Using our thinking about our senses and body language. And finally, we talked about, or the author talked about, the creative breakthrough. How to push through tension when we're really focused on something and we feel that we're just struggling to get through it, and no matter what we do, it's not working and we're frustrated. So take a break. Step away from the work and take a break. And I can say confidently, I've done this before many times. This is exactly why I take breaks during the stream. Because I need to mentally take breaks to sort of recuperate, refresh my mind, and when I go back in, if I'm like trying to get a script down, I'm like, boom, like, okay, let's do it. I know what I have to do this time. I remember I was very recently, I was frustrated with one script I was trying to record for Metal Gear Rising. I was frustrated because I couldn't get down Raiden's voice properly. it was either Raiden's voice or Armstrong's voice, but I think it was the both of them. I was just really struggling with it, and I couldn't get the scene down, and I was really, really upset and irritated. But I stepped away from it. I took a break, moved on to something else, and I said, you know what? Like, I'll come back to this, and I will get this down the next day. And sure enough, after I slept well, I went back to it the next day. I had a new sense of purpose in my mind. I'm like, okay, I'm getting this down no matter what. I don't care how long this takes me. I'm going to do this. And it's about being persistent. And I did it. And I'm really happy with how it came out. And there's actually a bunch of shorts that are going to be coming out based off of that. It's actually one of my biggest projects. I think the biggest project I've worked on to date. And I struggled a lot. But I know that because I was struggling, I'm making progress. Those are very hard voices to do. And I know that by doing these challenges and by continuing to push myself of doing more difficult scenes, I'm only going to elevate my skills higher and higher and higher. And it will get to a point where I am fledged out. Much like John Coltrane, who learned all the different styles of playing music and of jazz with the saxophone. I am learning all the different styles of voice acting, or many different styles of voice acting, through others, through scenes. Like through the Batman Arkham games with Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill's the Joker, like Metal Gear Rising, like Star Wars The Force Unleashed, or the prequels, or Fallout New Vegas. I keep learning and learning and learning. And that's what's important. And finally, the author talked about emotional pitfalls. So when we're in this creative active phase, these are sort of the traps to look out for. Where we talk about complacency, conservatism, dependency, impatience, grandiosity, and inflexibility. So complacency being, oh, like, yeah, what I did was good. That was pretty good. Good enough. Good job. Instead of being like, okay, what could I have done better? What could I do better to push myself? And conservatism, sorry, that's more conservatism. Complacency is more taking for granted, taking for granted ideas we've made. So it's like, yeah, I've come up with this routine and, yeah, I know what it is I have to do. I know what I'm doing. I know exactly what I have to do. It's like, no. Your plan is always changing. You should have a goal in mind, but you shouldn't get complacent with how you're going to get to it. It's like, oh, I know exactly how I'm going to get to it. I know exactly how I'm going to do this. Boom, 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 boom. Easy, done. Just like that. And then conservatism is getting too used to your routine, getting too comfortable, being like, oh, why do I have to change? Why do I have to risk anything? Dependency with being dependent on people's feedback and their approval. Impatience with, of course, being impatient with yourself and the progress you're making. Grandiosity is, well, having too inflated of an ego, essentially. Being too self-absorbed in your work. Not being able to properly criticize yourself. And inflexibility. Which is the, ability to... with inflexibility, if you're not flexible to your ideas and approaches, you're never going to be able to discover new things. If you don't experiment, you will never find new ways you could be improving yourself. And then lastly, we talked about one of the 9 stories. One of the 9 stories of different strategic approaches to the same goal. So this was the first of 9, and we will read the others. Or continue to read the others next week. I think that's a good place to end things for today. So, I would like to thank all of you very much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. I appreciate all your support. And I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. And I will see you all next week on next Monday. So until then, I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Go out, have fun, enjoy drinks with friends, go out and party, or have a nice night and stay at home and chill, whatever your cup of tea really is. In either case, I hope your weekend goes well, and thank you again so much for all of your support. I do really appreciate it, guys. Thank you. And until then, I will see you all next week. So take care.